The storm should have driven every soul indoors, yet one solitary figure remained at the window, sensing that the night carried more than thunder. A vow, once spoken in self-defense, pressed against a heart already trembling, because a stranger cloaked in shadows was riding straight into her quiet world. The moment their eyes met through the curtain of rain, the air shifted, charged with danger, desire, and the echo of a past she tried to forget. One forbidden kiss shattered the boundary she swore would protect her, awakening a secret that threatens to upend everything she knows. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from today? And what do you love most about period romances, the passion, the mystery, or the impossible choices? Rain lashed against the ancient stone walls of Willowbrook, a quaint village nestled in the heart of the Cotswolds, where the rolling hills whispered secrets to the wind. It was the year 1815, and the world outside felt as turbulent as the storm brewing in Eleanor's chest. She stood at the window of her modest cottage, her fingers tracing the cool pane, watching the downpour turn the dirt path into a river of mud. At 24, Eleanor Thorne had long since resigned herself to a life of quiet spinsterhood. No suitors, no scandals, just the steady rhythm of tending her late father's herb garden and teaching the village children their letters. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The storm had brought more than thunder. It carried whispers of the new arrival at Blackwood Manor, the grand estate overlooking the valley. The Duke of Ravenswood, they said, a man shrouded in mystery and malice, his reputation as black as the clouds above. Widowed young, heir to a fortune built on ruthless dealings, he was the sort who devoured innocence like a wolf in the fold. Eleanor had vowed never to marry, not after seeing her mother's heart shattered by a faithless husband. "I'll remain a spinster till the end," she'd declared to her closest friend, Clara, over tea the week before. "No man will claim me." Yet, as lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the silhouette of a rider galloping through the torrent, Eleanor's breath caught. The horse reared against the gale, its rider cloaked in a sodden greatcoat, dismounting with a grace that belied the fury of the weather. He strode toward the village square, water streaming from his broad shoulders, his face half hidden by the brim of his hat. Who would venture out in such a tempest? The villagers huddled indoors, shutters rattling like fearful hearts. Eleanor couldn't look away. Something pulled at her, an inexplicable thread tugging her toward the unknown. She grabbed her shawl, the woolen one her mother had knitted years ago, and slipped out the door before reason could stop her. The rain soaked her simple muslin gown instantly, the fabric clinging to her slender frame like a second skin. Her dark curls escaped their pins, whipping wildly as she hurried down the path. Why? She couldn't say, only that the storm felt alive, charged with a promise or a peril she couldn't ignore. The rider had reached the old oak at the square's edge, tethering his horse and shaking off the deluge. As Eleanor approached, mud splashing at her half-boots, he turned. His eyes, storm-grey and piercing, locked onto hers, the Duke of Ravenswood. Up close, he was taller than she'd imagined. His jaw set like carved marble, a scar tracing his left cheek from some forgotten duel. Water dripped from his raven hair, and for a moment the world narrowed to just them, the rain a curtain sealing them from the rest. "Miss," he said, his voice low and rough, cutting through the roar like thunder, "you shouldn't be out here. This storm will swallow you whole." Eleanor's heart pounded. Not from fear, but from the intensity in his gaze. No one had ever looked at her like that, as if she were a puzzle he meant to solve, or a flame he intended to claim. "And you, your grace, what brings a duke to brave the flood?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips, wicked and knowing. Debts to collect, hearts to mend, or break. He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking to nothing. The rain blurred everything, but not the heat of his presence. Before she could retreat, a gust tore her shawl free, sending it fluttering into the mud. He caught her arm to steady her, his touch firm yet gentle, sending a jolt through her veins. Time slowed. His face hovered inches from hers, those grey eyes searching, daring. And then, without warning, he leaned in. His lips brushed hers, not a kiss born of tenderness, but of the storm's wild abandon. Soft at first, then urgent, tasting of rain and rebellion. Eleanor froze, then melted, her vow shattering like glass under the weight of that moment. The world spun, the rain a symphony to their stolen breath. When he pulled back, his expression was unreadable, a mix of triumph and torment. "Some vows," he murmured, "are meant to be broken." She stumbled away, cheeks burning, the taste of him lingering like forbidden fruit. Back in her cottage, door bolted against the night, Eleanor pressed a hand to her lips. What had she done? The wicked Duke had kissed her in the rain, and in that instant her world had tilted forever. Spinster no more. Or had she just invited the devil himself into her heart? The storm raged on, but inside a fiercer one brewed. Little did she know this was only the beginning. The Duke's shadows hid secrets that could unravel everything she held dear. If you're captivated by Eleanor's tale already, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. From which city and country are you watching? Let's journey through this romance together. The morning after the storm dawned crisp and golden over Willowbrook, the Cotswolds hills bathed in a deceptive calm. Eleanor Thorne moved through her cottage with the practiced grace of routine, her hands steady as she kneaded dough for the day's bread. The small home, with its thatched roof and walls of honeyed stone, smelled of lavender from the bundles hanging by the hearth and the faint earthiness of drying herbs. At 24, she had made peace with this life, simple, solitary, unburdened by the whims of men. Her muslin gown, high-necked and sprigged with faded wildflowers, whispered against her ankles as she worked. No frills for a spinster, practicality suited her, yet her mind wandered, unbidden, to the night before. The Duke's kiss lingered like a bruise on her lips, tender and insistent. She shook her head, scolding herself. "Foolish girl," she murmured to the empty room. Vows were not so easily shattered by a stranger's whim. She had returned home drenched, her heart racing, and bolted the door against the gale and against her own folly. Sleep had come fitfully, haunted by grey eyes and the taste of rain. A knock shattered the quiet. Eleanor wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron and opened the door to find Clara Hargrove, her dearest friend since childhood, bundled in a woolen cloak against the morning chill. Clara's cheeks were flushed, her bonnet askew, as if she had hurried from her family's neighbouring farm. "Eleanor, you won't believe the talk in the village." Clara bustled inside, shaking off droplets from the lingering mist. She was 22, with bright auburn curls and a laugh that could chase clouds, though today her eyes sparkled with gossip rather than mirth. The Duke of Ravenswood, Julian, they call him informally, arrived at Blackwood Manor yesterday eve. In that dreadful storm, the whole square saw him, cloaked like some highwayman from the tales. Eleanor's pulse quickened, but she busied herself with the teapot, filling it from the pump in the corner. "I've heard the rumours, Clara. A widower with a shadowed past. Best we keep our distance." She struck a flint to light the fire under the kettle, the flames leaping eagerly. The cottage's single room served as kitchen, parlour, and sanctuary, its oak table scarred from years of shared meals. Outside, the herb garden bloomed defiantly, rosemary, thyme, and sage, her late father's legacy, now her livelihood and solace. Clara perched on a stool, untying her bonnet. "Oh, but it's more than that. Father says the Duke's come to settle debts from his late uncle's estates. Blackwood's been empty for years, falling to ruin. Now servants scurry about like ants, and the carriage arrived at dawn with trunks from London." She leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. They say his wife died under mysterious circumstances. Poison, some whisper. And he's not the marrying kind anymore, cold as the moors in winter. Eleanor poured the steaming water over dried chamomile, the herbal steam curling like secrets. She handed Clara a cup, settling across from her. The porcelain, chipped but cherished, had been her mother's. Mysteries belong to the gentry, Clara. We have our own world here. Willowbrook's hierarchy was etched in the landscape. The Duke's manor loomed on the hill, a Gothic sentinel of ivy-clad towers and arched windows, while the village clustered below, cottages for labourers, the blacksmith's forge belching smoke, the church spire piercing the sky. Etiquette ruled even the humblest interactions, curtsies to the squire, nods to neighbours, and Sundays filled with sermons on duty and decorum. But Clara pressed on, undeterred. You should have seen the villagers yesterday, peeking from windows as he rode in. And you, out in the rain. What possessed you? Her eyes narrowed playfully. Don't think I didn't hear from old Mrs. Wilkins. She swore she saw you near the oak. Heat crept up Eleanor's neck. She sipped her tea, the warmth grounding her. A whim, the storm. It pulled me out. She couldn't confess the rest. The rider's silhouette, the clash of gazes, the kiss that upended her resolve. Julian Ravenswood. The name fit him, sharp, unyielding. At perhaps 30, he carried the weight of title and loss, his scar a map of battles unseen. Widowed 3 years, heir to vast lands stretching beyond the Cotswolds, yet whispers painted him as ruthless, a man who foreclosed on farms without remorse, collected rents with an iron fist. Clara chattered on about the upcoming harvest fair, the etiquette of invitations from higher folk, how ladies like the squire's daughters donned empire waist gowns of silk for such events, while Eleanor made do with cotton. The conversation flowed like the brook outside, easing Eleanor's tension. Yet beneath it, a subtle unease stirred. Her father's death 2 years prior had left her alone, reliant on teaching village children, letters and sums in the church hall for a pittance. No brothers to protect her, no dowry to tempt suitors. Spinsterhood was her armour. As Clara rose to leave, promising to return with fresh eggs, a shadow fell across the threshold. A boy from the manor, no more than 12, stood there, cap in hand, his livery mud-spattered. "Miss Thorne, a message from His Grace." He thrust a sealed note into her palm, wax stamped with a raven's crest, and scampered off before she could question him. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she broke the seal. The paper was fine vellum, the ink bold. "Miss Thorne, the storm revealed more than rain. I seek a word in private at the manor's garden gate tomorrow at dusk. Your servant Julian Ravenswood." Clara gasped over her shoulder. "What is it?" Eleanor folded the note, heart hammering. A summons from the Duke. Invitation or trap? The quiet of her world cracked, just a hair, letting in the chill of uncertainty. What secrets did he hold, and why her? As Clara departed with worried glances, Eleanor stared at the hills, where Blackwood Manor brooded. The first whisper of rupture had arrived, carried on the wings of a raven. Dusk painted the Cotswolds in hues of bruised purple, the sun dipping behind Blackwood Manor's jagged silhouette like a retreating foe. Eleanor Thorne hesitated at the garden gate, her fingers gripping the iron latch until her knuckles whitened. The note burned in her pocket, its words a siren call she couldn't ignore. What madness had seized her, a spinster from Willowbrook, venturing alone to the Duke's domain? Whispers would fly by morning. Mrs. Wilkins' sharp eyes missed nothing, and the village paths were alive with gossip even after the storm. She had told no one, not even Clara. Her simple gown of dove-grey wool, hemmed with modest lace, felt inadequate against the manor's grandeur. No bonnet, her dark curls pinned severely, though a few tendrils escaped, defiant as her resolve. At 24 she knew the cost of impropriety. A lady's reputation was her fortress, and this was scaling the walls. The gate creaked open under her push, revealing the overgrown gardens, wild roses tangling with ivy, their thorns a warning. Statues of forgotten gods loomed in the twilight, moss-cloaked and solemn. Eleanor stepped onto the gravel path, her half-boots crunching softly. The air carried the scent of damp earth and blooming night jasmine, a heady mix that quickened her pulse. "Your Grace." Her voice emerged steadier than she felt, echoing faintly off the stone walls. A figure emerged from the shadows of an arbour, tall and unyielding, Julian Ravenswood. He wore a tailored coat of midnight blue, silver buttons glinting like stars, his cravat crisp despite the day's labours. At 30, he moved with the predator's grace, his scar a silver thread in the fading light. Those storm-grey eyes fixed on her, intense, unblinking. "Miss Thorne, you came." His tone held no surprise, only a quiet satisfaction, like a man who bent the world to his will. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. "Curiosity, Your Grace. Or folly." The note was unexpected. Her heart raced, remembering the rain, the kiss that had shattered her vows. She had spent the day in turmoil, weeding the herb garden with furious strokes, trying to bury the memory. Spinsterhood was safety. This man was chaos. He gestured to a stone bench beneath the arbour, its surface chilled by evening dew. "Sit. We have matters to discuss." As she complied, he remained standing, a tower of authority. The garden felt intimate, enclosed, the manor's lights twinkling distant through the hedges. Eleanor folded her hands in her lap, nails digging into palms. "Speak plainly. What debt do I owe you? Or is this some jest at the village spinster's expense?" A low chuckle escaped him, warm yet edged. "No jest. Last night, in the storm, you saw me, truly saw me, when others avert their eyes." He paced a step, then stopped, his boots silent on the moss. "Blackwood Manor is in ruin, Miss Thorne. My uncle's excesses left debts that choke the estate. Creditors circle like vultures. I return to salvage what I can." She frowned, the confession catching her off guard. The wicked Duke vulnerable? "And what has that to do with me? I'm no banker, no heiress." His eyes darkened, shadows deepening. "You have knowledge others lack, your father's herbs, rare remedies, tinctures that could heal the sick among my tenants. The village relies on you, but so could I, in exchange for your discretion and your aid. I offer protection from rumours, from want." Protection. The word hung heavy. Eleanor thought of her cottage, the dwindling coins from lessons, the winter looming. Her father's garden sustained her, but barely, yet alliance with him. The village would brand her his paramour, her teaching post lost, Clara's friendship strained. I cannot." Hesitation gripped her, the social cost vivid, sidelong glances at church, doors closing to her. "My life is my own, no entanglements." Julian knelt before her. Level now, his face inches away. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and leather, mingled with the jasmine. "Entanglements? This is survival. Refuse, and the debts will foreclose farms, including your neighbours, Clara's family. Accept, and we forge a quiet pact. You supply the remedies, I ensure your security." Her breath hitched. Clara, the fair-haired girl with dreams of her own, tied to that struggling farm. Refusal meant watching friends suffer. Acceptance bound her to him, to secrets and stares. Before she could reply, a rustle shattered the moment. Footsteps crunched from the path, a figure in a dark cloak, face obscured. "Your Grace!" The voice was sharp, feminine, laced with venom. Lady Isolde Blackthorne, the Duke's distant cousin and rumoured schemer, emerged into the light. At 28, she was elegance incarnate, her empire waist-gown of emerald silk rustling, pearls at her throat. Heir to a lesser estate, she had designs on Blackwood, whispers said, through marriage or machination. "What is this?" Isolde's eyes raked Eleanor, disdain curling her lips. "Consorting with the village herb witch? Have you no shame, Julian? The tenants starve while you dally." Julian rose swiftly, shielding Eleanor with his frame. "This is no dalliance, Isolde. Leave us." She laughed, cold as frost. "Oh, but it will be, once word spreads. I've eyes everywhere. The squire will hear of this impropriety." Her gaze lingered on Eleanor, promising ruin. Antagonist unveiled, her jealousy ablade. Eleanor stood, trembling with outrage. The new world unfolded. Alliances fragile, enemies in silk. Refusal now meant isolation, acceptance, a forced step into his shadowed realm. I'll consider it," she whispered, voice breaking. But as Isolde swept away, her skirts whispering threats, Eleanor knew the choice was made. Her status teetered, from solitary spinster to reluctant ally. The garden gate loomed, but turning back felt impossible. What fresh perils awaited in the Duke's debt-ridden empire? The sun climbed high over Willowbrook 2 days later, casting a warm glow on the village green where the annual harvest assembly gathered. Eleanor Thorne smoothed her gown, a modest empire waist of soft cambric, its high neckline edged with simple ribbon, and stepped from her cottage. The decision weighed on her like the basket of herbs slung over her arm. She had agreed to the Duke's pact in a hurried note sent at dawn, discretion for remedies, protection for her solitude. But now, venturing into the crowd felt like stepping onto thin ice. The green buzzed with life. Farmers in rough woolens bartered apples and cheeses. Children darted between skirts. And the squire's wife, Mrs. Beaumont, presided over the tea tables like a queen on her dais. Banners fluttered from the maypole, and the air hummed with laughter and the scent of fresh-baked pies. Eleanor spotted Clara waving from a cluster of young women, their bonnets trimmed with ribbons far finer than her own. "Eleanor, over here!" Clara called, her auburn curls bouncing as she hurried forward. At 22, Clara's farm-fresh cheeks glowed with excitement. "You've been scarce since the storm. Come, join us. The squire's daughters are hosting tea. Such finery." Eleanor forced a smile, weaving through the throng. Her basket drew curious glances. Villagers knew her herbs eased fevers and mended bones, but today it held rarities for Blackwood, feverfew and willowbark, wrapped discreetly. "Just delivering to a neighbour," she lied lightly, though guilt twisted her gut. The Duke's protection meant silence, but secrets festered in Willowbrook. At the tea table, lace cloths draped over wicker stands and silver teapots gleamed. Mrs. Beaumont, a stout woman of 40 in a bombazine gown with puffed sleeves, nodded curtly. Her daughters, Lydia and Harriet, tittered behind fans, their muslin dresses sprigged with silk roses. "Miss Thorne," Mrs. Beaumont said, her voice syrupy yet sharp, "how kind of you to grace us, though I hear you've been occupied with manor affairs." Eleanor's cheeks warmed. Whispers already. Isolde's threat echoed in her mind. She curtsied, accepting a cup of weak tea. "Merely tending my garden, ma'am. The harvest demands it." Lydia leaned in, her blue eyes gleaming with mischief. "Garden? Or the Duke's gardens? Father says Blackwood stirs at last. And you, the village spinster, seen at the gate after dusk. Bold for one of your station." The words landed like a slap, subtle but stinging. Class friction crackled. Eleanor's cotton hem seemed suddenly threadbare beside their silks. Clara stiffened beside her, shooting Lydia a glare. "Mind your tongue, Lydia. Eleanor's worth 10 of your idle chatter." Mrs. Beaumont cleared her throat, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Gossip is the spice of village life, dear, though reputations, fragile things." The women around the table murmured, fans fluttering like wary birds. Eleanor sipped her tea, the bitterness mirroring her unease. Rejection simmered here, in sidelong glances and veiled barbs. She was no longer just the quiet teacher. Now she carried the Duke's shadow. A hush fell as hoofbeats approached. Julian Ravenswood rode up on a sleek bay, dismounting with effortless command. His riding coat of dark green superfine hugged his broad frame, breeches tucked into polished hessians. At 30, he cut a figure that silenced the green, tall, scarred, unapproachable. Villagers parted like the Red Sea, whispers trailing him. He nodded to the squire, then his gaze found Eleanor, storm-grey eyes locked on hers, a micro-gesture, a faint tilt of his head, acknowledging their pact without a word. Heat rose in her chest, unbidden. He approached the table, his presence a shield against the stairs. "Ladies," he said, voice low and resonant, "a fine gathering." His eyes lingered on Eleanor a beat too long, a shared silence heavy with unspoken alliance. Mrs. Beaumont fluttered, offering him a chair, but he declined with polite firmness. "Miss Thorne," he added, turning to her directly, "your remedies saved my stable hand's fever last night. My thanks." The table froze. Lydia's fan snapped shut. "Remedies? From the spinster's garden," she whispered loud enough for all. Eleanor's pulse thrummed. Minimal defense. He had placed her in the light, yet not too brightly. She met his gaze, a small advance. Her fingers brushed his as she adjusted her basket, the touch fleeting, electric. A brooch caught her eye then, pinned to his lapel. A silver raven clutching a laurel. Worn but polished. Symbolic, she sensed, a family heirloom from better days. It glinted as he shifted, starting something in her, a curiosity about the man behind the wicked title. Before she could speak, a shadow detached from the crowd. Lady Isolde Blackthorne glided forward, her emerald gown a slash of colour, pearls at her ears. At 28, she embodied calculated grace, her dark hair coiled like a serpent. She had been watching, Eleanor realized, from the edges, acting in shadows, her presence a chill wind. "Julian, darling," Isolde purred, linking her arm through his. "Escaping the manor's drudgery, or collecting more favours?" Her eyes slid to Eleanor, venomous. The brooch seemed to dim under her gaze. Julian's jaw tightened, but he extricated himself smoothly. "Business, Isolde, as always." He inclined his head to Eleanor once more, then strode away, leaving the air charged. Lydia tittered again. "Favours indeed. The Duke and the herb witch? The scandal sheets in Bath will devour this." Mrs. Beaumont's lips thinned. "Enough, but mind your steps, Miss Thorne. Associations have consequences." Eleanor rose, basket secure, Clara at her side. The tea had tested her. Rejection from the gentry, a flicker of acceptance from him. Yet as she walked away, a boy thrust a folded Gazette into her hand, the local sheet from Chipping Norton. She unfolded it later, alone in her cottage, heart sinking. A small notice. "Curious visitors at Blackwood Manor stir whispers of impropriety among the lower sorts." The consequence bloomed, visible and vicious. Isolde's hand, no doubt. Eleanor's world tilted further. How much more could she endure before the village turned fully against her? And what role would Julian play when the shadows deepened? The wind howled through the Cotswolds like a scorned lover, whipping the carriage's curtains as it rattled along the muddy lane toward Blackwood Manor. Eleanor Thorne clutched the edge of the worn leather seat, her basket of herbs secured at her feet. 3 days had passed since the harvest assembly, and the Gazette's whisper had spread like foxfire. Subtle barbs at church, averted eyes from former pupils' mothers. Her teaching hours dwindled, isolation crept in like fog. Julian's pact was her lifeline now, fragile as spider silk. She had agreed to deliver more remedies in person, under cover of a village errand. But the sky had darkened at noon, unleashing a squall that turned the path to slurry. The Duke's coachman, grim-faced under his oilskin hat, had appeared at her cottage door just as thunder cracked. "His Grace insists, miss. The storm'll worsen." No choice. Refusal meant more debts unpaid, more farms like Clara's teetering. Lightning forked ahead, illuminating the manor's silhouette, towers clawing at the roiling clouds. The carriage lurched to a halt at the stables, rain sheeting down in silver rods. Eleanor dashed out, skirts sodden, only to find Julian waiting under the eaves, lantern in hand. His greatcoat glistened, broad shoulders squared against the gale. At 30, he seemed forged from the storm itself, scar stark against his rain-slicked skin. "Inside, quickly," he urged, his voice cutting the roar. He guided her through a side door, his hand firm at her elbow, warm through the chill fabric. No impropriety, just necessity. The corridor swallowed them, stone walls echoing their footsteps, torches sputtering in iron sconces. They reached a small study off the library, fire roaring in the grate to chase the damp. Julian shrugged off his coat, revealing a simple linen shirt, sleeves rolled to elbows, exposing forearms corded from riding. The room smelled of beeswax and old books, shelves groaning under leather-bound tomes. A harpsichord sat in the corner, dust motes dancing in the firelight. "Sit by the fire, Miss Thorne." He poured brandy from a decanter into 2 glasses, the amber liquid catching the flames. "This tempest trapped us both. The roads will be impassable till morning." Eleanor's pulse quickened. Overnight, alone with him. Her dove-grey gown clung uncomfortably, curls plastered to her neck. She accepted the glass, the burn of brandy steadying her. Trapped indeed, but my reputation. The village already murmurs. He settled into a wing chair opposite, grey eyes softening in the glow. "Let them murmur. Here, you're safe." A pause hung, heavy as the rain battering the windows. He studied her, not with the wicked intensity of their first meeting, but something raw, vulnerable. "You honour me by coming, after the Gazette." She sipped again, warmth spreading. Honour, or desperation, Isolde's work, no doubt. She watches like a hawk. Julian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. She does, cousin by blood, viper by nature, seeks Blackwood for her own, through me if she must. He set his glass down, rising to the harpsichord. His fingers hovered over the keys, hesitant. "My late wife played this. Eliza. Gone 3 years now." The confession slipped out, unguarded. Eleanor leaned forward, drawn by the crack in his armour. "Played? You mentioned no music before." He pressed a key, a single mournful note tolling like a bell. She was light, Eleanor, laughter in every room, but duty. It poisoned us. His hands moved, coaxing a simple melody, an old folk tune from the hills, halting at first, then fluid. The notes wove through the storm's fury, intimate, exposing layers long buried. Guilt shadowed his face, brows furrowed. "I was away too often. Wars in Europe, estates in ruin. When I returned she was fading. A fever, they said. But I wonder if my absence broke her spirit first." Eleanor rose, drawn to the instrument. The anchor of the music pulled at her own wounds. "My father taught me a little loss. It reshapes us." She sat beside him on the bench, their shoulders brushing, accidental yet charged. Her fingers joined his, tentative on a harmony. The tune swelled, rain a counterpoint outside. In that confinement, walls fell. "Mother died of a broken heart after father left for the wars, never returned. I vowed no man would wield such power over me." Their eyes met, the firelight gilding his scar, softening the wicked edge. "Yet here we are," he murmured, his hand covering hers briefly on the keys. A gesture, tacit, a promise of understanding, not possession. Trust bloomed, fragile and fierce, changing the air between them. No kiss, no fervor, just shared silence, the melody fading to echoes. He pulled back first, standing. "You've a gift, Eleanor, like your herbs, healing what others overlook." His voice held warmth, humanizing him, not the ruthless duke, but a man scarred by duty and regret. She smiled faintly, the emotional tide rising. For the first time, alliance felt like partnership, not pact. A knock shattered the moment. The butler entered, soaked, a sealed letter in hand. "From Lady Blackthorne, Your Grace." Urgent. Julian broke the wax, a blackthorn crest, and scanned the lines. His face darkened, the warmth evaporating. "What is it?" Eleanor's voice trembled. He crumpled the paper. "She summoned the squire, accuses me of entangling innocence. Your name figures prominently. By dawn the village will know, and not kindly." The storm outside paled against the chill settling in her chest. Trust forged in music, now threatened by Isolde's envoy. How deep did her sabotage run? As night deepened, Eleanor wondered if their fragile bond could weather the coming gale. Dawn broke grey and unforgiving over Willowbrook, the storm's remnants dripping from the thatched roofs like reluctant tears. Eleanor Thorne woke in the manor's guest chamber. The four-poster bed's linens tangled around her. Sleep had evaded her after the butler's interruption, Julian's face etched with fury as he read Isolde's missive. He had insisted she stay, the road still treacherous, but propriety gnawed at her. A spinster overnight in the Duke's home, the scandal would ignite like dry tinder. She dressed hastily in her damp gown, now stiff with dried mud, and slipped downstairs. The house stirred, servants whispering in the halls, the scent of bacon and fresh bread wafting from the kitchens. Julian met her in the breakfast parlour, his eyes shadowed, cravat askew. At 30, exhaustion carved deeper lines into his scar, making him look less the wicked duke and more a man besieged. "Eleanor," he said, voice rough from a sleepless night. "The letter. It's worse than I thought. Isolde's called a meeting at the squire's today. She's twisting our pact into something vile." He poured coffee from a silver pot, the steam curling like accusations. "She claims I'm seducing village women to evade debts, starting with you. Proof? That Gazette note was just the beginning. She's fabricated letters, witnesses from the shadows." Eleanor's stomach twisted. Fabricated. Her hand trembled on the cup. "Then I must go, face it head on. Hiding here seals my ruin." The warmth of last night's music felt distant now, a fragile bridge crumbling under Isolde's boot. Julian's jaw clenched. "No. Let me handle—" A pounding at the front door cut him short. The butler hurried in, face pale. "The squire, Your Grace, and Lady Blackthorne, with constables." Constables! The word chilled the air. Eleanor rose, heart slamming. No arrests for her or Julian, that vow held firm, but the threat loomed, a noose of suspicion. They entered the parlour like conquerors, Squire Beaumont, red-faced in his hunting coat, flanked by two stern-faced officers in blue wool. Isolde swept in last, her crimson pelisse trimmed with fox fur, eyes gleaming with triumph. At 28, she was a vision of poised malice, her upswept hair crowned with a velvet toque. "Julian Ravenswood," the squire boomed, his moustache quivering. "Grave allegations. Lady Blackthorne brings evidence of impropriety, enticing innocents to cover your fiscal sins. This woman," he jabbed a finger at Eleanor, "overnight here, unchaperoned. The village demands answers." Isolde stepped forward, unfolding a sheaf of papers with theatrical flourish. "Letters in your hand, cousin, promising Miss Thorne favours for her. Services and witnesses. The stable boy saw her arrive in the storm. The butler, your own man, confirms the night spent under your roof." She turned to Eleanor, lips curling. Poor spinster. Lured by a duke's whispers, But debts don't vanish. With dalliances, Blackwood's ledgers show sabotage, missing rents, forged claims. You've poisoned the estate, Julian, and now you poison reputations. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Forged letters. The squire scanned them, brow furrowing. This is serious. If true, it borders on fraud. Tenants suffer, farms foreclosed unjustly. Miss Thorne, your involvement taints the whole village. Julian surged to his feet, slamming a fist on the table. Lies! Isolde forges to claim Blackwood herself. Those letters are her handiwork. Ink fresh, seals tampered. He snatched one, holding it to the light. See the watermark from her estate's mill and the debts? My uncle's doing, not mine. I've proofs in the study, ledgers, witnesses from London. But Isolde laughed, sharp and slicing. Proofs? Conveniently locked away. The constables will seize them. Squire, I urge you, bar this man from the assembly tonight. Expose him publicly. And Miss Thorne, relinquish your teaching post. No herb witch consorting with debtors. The squire hesitated, glancing at the officers. No arrests yet, but investigation. Your Grace, stand down. Miss Thorne, leave Willowbrook until cleared. Village can't abide scandal. Eleanor's world fractured. Leave. Her cottage, her garden, Clara, all stripped away. Isolation crashed down, a tangible loss. She met Julian's eyes, seeing the break. Trust shattered by Isolde's frontal assault, their pact born of necessity, now a noose. I won't flee, she whispered, voice cracking. But the squire's nod sealed it, support withdrawn, her status plummeting from ally to suspect. Isolde's smile widened, victory etched in every line. Wise choice, Spinster, but the damage is done. Julian, without allies, you're alone. Blackwood falls to me by week's end, through law or legacy. The constables escorted Eleanor out, her basket forgotten in the chaos. Julian reached for her arm, but she pulled away, the emotional chasm widening. This changes everything, he murmured, torment in his grey eyes. No return to innocence. The point of no return hit like a thunderclap. Her action, staying the night, impossibilized retreat. Reputations wounded publicly, alliance ruptured. Outside, villagers gathered at the gates, murmurs swelling to shouts. Witch, debtor's whore. Stones skipped near her feet, not striking but warning. Clara waited at the edge, face ashen, but even she stepped back, eyes wide with doubt. Eleanor's isolation deepened, a valley of despair. Back at her cottage, door barred, she sank to the floor. The Duke's world had claimed her, but at what cost? As dusk fell, a final ultimatum arrived, a note from the squire. Depart by morn, or face the assembly's judgment. Julian's silence echoed loudest. Had their shared melody been a lie? The raven brooch, once symbolic of alliance, now mocked from memory. Exiled emotionally, she stared into the fire, wondering if redemption or ruin awaited in the shadows ahead. The afternoon sun slanted through the grimy window of Eleanor's cottage, casting long shadows across the scarred oak table. She had defied the squire's ultimatum, barricading herself inside since dawn, the door unyielding to the knocks of curious villagers. Her hands, still trembling from the morning's confrontation, sifted through a small wooden box, her father's old ledgers, tucked away after his death. Desperation had driven her to them. If Isolde's accusations held water, perhaps proof lay hidden in the past. Julian's silence gnawed at her, but anger fueled her resolve. No more victim. She would unearth the truth herself. The box yielded treasures, yellowed receipts from Blackwood's tenants, dated years back. Her father had supplied herbs not just to Willowbrook, but to the manor, tinctures for fevers, salves for wounds. One ledger caught her eye, an entry from 1812, scrawled in her father's neat hand. Payment refused by Lady Blackthorn's agent. Debt fabricated to seize Thorn plot. Fabricated. Eleanor's breath hitched. Isolde's family had long coveted her land, the fertile patch bordering Blackwood. But deeper in, a folded letter slipped free, addressed to her father, sealed with the blackthorn crest. She broke the brittle wax, unfolding the vellum. The words blurred at first, then sharpened. "Dearest Mr. Thorne, the Duke's uncle owes no such sum. This is Isolde's ploy to undermine the estate, funneling rents to her coffers. Guard this testimony, it may save Ravenswood." Signed by Eliza Ravenswood, Julian's late wife. A portrait miniature tumbled out next, pinned to the letter. Eliza's face soft and smiling, with a note in her script, "For the loyal, she watches us all." Eleanor's heart pounded. Eliza hadn't died of mere fever. This hinted at poison, Isolde's hand, perhaps, to clear the path for her own claim on Blackwood. Manipulation ran deep, a web spun over years. The debts Julian fought, Isolde's invention, siphoning funds while blaming his reckless rule. No wonder his eyes held that haunted guilt. He carried Eliza's death as his failure when it was betrayal all along. She rose, clutching the proofs. No more hiding. Agency surged through her like the Cotswolds' wind, sharp, unyielding. She penned a hasty note to Clara, "Meet me at the church hall. Truth awaits." Then, bolder still, she drafted a public missive for the squire, copying the letter's contents, vowing to present it at the evening assembly. The village demanded answers. She would give them, reframing Julian not as the wicked debtor, but a man ensnared by kin's deceit. Clara arrived breathless, her cloak muddied from the lanes. "Eleanor, the whispers grow wild. Constables at your door, Isolde parading as saviour. You must flee." "No!" Eleanor thrust the letter forward. "Read this. Isolde's the thief, not Julian. Eliza knew, died for it maybe." Clara's eyes widened, colour draining from her cheeks. Together they bundled the proofs, ledger, letter, miniature. "We go to the assembly. I'll speak. The village sees a spinster. Let them see a woman of truth." The church hall loomed as dusk fell, lanterns flickering like wary eyes. Villagers crammed the space, farmers in wool, wives in calico, the squire on a raised dais with Isolde at his side, her crimson gown a banner of false virtue. Murmurs hushed as Eleanor entered, Clara at her elbow, the basket of proofs heavy in her arms. Heads turned, gasps rippling. "The witch returns," someone hissed. But Eleanor lifted her chin. Stepping forward, her voice steady despite the quake in her knees. "Squire Beaumont, neighbours," she called, the hall falling silent. "I come not as accused, but accuser. Lady Blackthorn's tales of debt and dalliance, lies woven from greed." She unfolded the letter, holding it high. Gasps echoed as she read Eliza's words, the hall erupting in shock. "Julian Ravenswood fights shadows cast by his cousin. She forged debts, stole rents, my father's land the first victim. This portrait, this testimony, proof." Isolde surged forward, face paling beneath her powder. "Slander! That spinster forges to save her lover. Julian's guilt over Eliza drives him mad, cold to her, dutiful to none." But the tide shifted. A tenant rose, grizzled face flushed. "My farm, rent doubled under her agents. Never paid fair." Others joined, voices swelling in indignation. Isolde's web cracked. The squire snatched the letter, brow furrowing as he scanned it. "This changes matters. Lady Blackthorn, explain." She faltered, venom twisting to fear. "It's misinterpreted. Family matters." But the hall boiled, shouts of thief and murderous, piquing the crowd's fury. Eleanor stood tall, her action rippling outward, altering perceptions. No longer the entangled innocent. She was the unmasker, respected whispers replacing scorn. From the back, Julian emerged, coat dusty from riding hard. His grey eyes met hers, reframed in the lantern light, not coldness but the weight of duty and loss he'd buried. He nodded, a contained gesture of trust, stepping to her side without touch. Eleanor's right. Isolde's plot ends here. Eliza's diary. I'll fetch it from the manor. It names you, cousin, in every shadow. Hope crested between them, a quiet advance. His hand brushed her sleeve in passing, affirming alliance over isolation. Trust rebuilt, stronger than passion's flicker. Villagers cheered, the peak of outrage against Isolde cresting like a wave, her empire crumbling under their glare. Yet danger loomed greater. Isolde's eyes narrowed, promising retaliation. You think this saves you? The assembly tonight. I'll counter with truths of my own. She swept out, skirts swirling like storm clouds. The squire cleared his throat. The village assembly reconvenes at Blackwood's Great Hall tomorrow eve, a public reckoning. All attend. Miss Thorne, your grace. Prepare. Eleanor exhaled, Julian's presence a steady anchor beside her. Truth revealed, agency claimed, but Isolde's threat echoed, drawing them toward a decisive clash. What final blade would she wield in the manor's shadowed lights? The great hall of Blackwood Manor gleamed under the glow of 200 candles, their flames dancing in crystal chandeliers like stars summoned for judgment. It was the eve of the village assembly, and Willowbrook had turned out in force. Farmers in their Sunday best, wives in starched muslin, the squire perched on a dais like a magistrate. The air hummed with tension, thick as the scent of beeswax and polished oak. Tapestries of ravens in flight adorned the walls, a fitting backdrop for the drama unfolding. Eleanor Thorne stood at the hall's edge, her heart a drumbeat against her ribs. Her gown, a simple empire waist of ivory cambric borrowed from Clara, felt like armor, modest lace at the neck, no jewels to betray vanity. At 24, she had never faced such a crowd, but the proofs burned in her reticule. Eliza's letter, the ledgers, the miniature portrait. Julian Ravenswood entered beside her, his presence a quiet storm. At 30, he cut a commanding figure in black superfine coat and silver waistcoat, the raven brooch pinned at his lapel, a symbol now of reclaimed legacy. His scar caught the light, no longer a mark of shame but of survival. Their eyes met briefly, a shared resolve passing unspoken. No hand-holding, no overt affection. Their bond had deepened through trials, trust forged in music and revelation. Yet Isolde's threat lingered, a shadow over the evening. The squire rapped his gavel, silencing the murmurs. This assembly convenes to settle matters of estate and honour. Lady Blackthorne, you claimed precedence. Speak. Isolde glided to the centre, a vision in sapphire silk, her dark curls piled high with pearls that mocked the manor's wealth. At 28, she embodied false nobility, her smile a blade. Thank you, squire. Julian's debts cripple Blackwood, farms lost, tenants starved. And this alliance with Miss Thorne? A desperate ploy. Biddy, she snapped her fingers, and a liveried footman presented a dossier thick with parchments. Witnesses attest the spinster visited under cover of night, unchaperoned. Letters, here, prove seduction to silence her. Even Eliza's death. Julian's neglect drove her to despair. I offer salvation, assume Blackwood's burdens myself, restore order. Gasps rippled through the hall. A bought witness. An elderly tenant Isolde had coerced, shuffled forward. I saw the lady slip in during the storm. Improper it was. The crowd shifted, doubt flickering, Eleanor's isolation from days past echoing in their stares. Lydia Beaumont whispered behind her fan, Told you, witch and debtor. Eleanor's blood surged. This was Isolde's final sabotage, a dossier of half-truths. False letters mimicking Julian's hand, witnesses greased with coin. Humiliation loomed, her reputation the sacrifice on Isolde's altar. But agency burned brighter. She stepped forward, voice clear and unyielding. "Lies, squire, all of it." The hall hushed. "Lady Blackthorn weaves deceit as she did the debts. I bring truth from Eliza herself." She withdrew the letter, unfolding it with deliberate grace. The vellum crackled like breaking chains. Reading aloud, her words filled the space. Eliza's testimony of Isolde's forgeries, rents diverted, plots to undermine the estate. The miniature portrait followed, passed hand to hand, gasps turning to outrage as faces recognized Eliza's gentle features. "She didn't fade from neglect," Eleanor continued, eyes locking on Isolde. "Poisoned by greed. My father's ledgers confirm. Your agents seized lands unjustly, starting with ours." Julian joined her, his voice resonant. "Isolde forged the debts to claim Blackwood. Eliza's diary, witnessed by my London solicitor here tonight, names you in every theft." The solicitor, a bespectacled man from the shadows, nodded gravely, producing the bound volume. Pages turned to entries of sabotage, missing funds, false claims dated to Isolde's hand. The hall erupted. Tenants surged forward, one grizzled farmer shouting, "She foreclosed my brother's plot, lied about the rent." A chorus swelled. "Thief! Schemer!" Isolde paled, her dossier crumbling in her grip as the squire seized it, comparing inks and seals. This is fraud!" he thundered. "Lady Blackthorn, your claims collapse. Blackwood remains with its duke, and you, exiled from Willowbrook, your estate seized for restitution." Isolde staggered, venom twisting to desperation. "You fools! He seduced her—" But the crowd drowned her, boos cascading like thunder. Squire Beaumont banged his gavel. "Enough! Justice prevails!" Villagers turned to Eleanor, eyes alight with respect. No longer the spinster witch, but the unmasker of evil. Clara beamed from the front, tears shining. Even Mrs. Beaumont nodded approval, her daughters silent. Julian faced Isolde as constables approached. "Your web ends, cousin. Eliza's memory demands it." She spat defiance, but was led away, her empire shattered in public view, humiliation complete, her pearls scattering like fallen stars. The hall fell to cheers, a wave of euphoria washing over Eleanor. Victory resounded, validating every trial. The storm's kiss, the forged pacts, the shadowed nights. The community reframed them, duke and teacher, equals in truth. Julian turned to her, the noise fading to a hush around them. In that silence post-tempest, his hand found hers beneath the crowd's gaze, a tacit commitment, fingers intertwining, warm and sure. No words needed, their moral choice defined them. Honor over ambition, love over legacy. As the assembly dispersed into celebration, Eleanor felt the weight lift. Blackwood's future brightened, their bond sealed in the firelight's glow. Yet in the quiet aftermath, Julian whispered, "Together, always." The raven brooch glinted, promising horizons beyond the storm. If this triumph has your heart soaring, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any other thrilling stories. The morning after the assembly dawned serene over Willowbrook, the Cotswolds hills cloaked in a soft mist that lifted like a veil from the village's wounds. Eleanor Thorne walked the path to Blackwood Manor, her steps lighter than they had been in weeks. The air carried the crisp scent of dew-kissed grass and blooming heather, a balm after the hall's thunderous reckoning. Her gown, a fresh one of pale blue muslin with a simple sash, fluttered gently. No more borrowed finery, but her own, mended with care. At 24, she felt transformed, not by title or wealth, but by the voice she had claimed in the candlelit fray. The manor gates stood open, no longer a barrier, but an invitation. Servants nodded as she passed, their faces bright with relief. Isolde's shadow had lifted. The constables had escorted her from the village at first light, bound for London under Squire's orders. Her estates, Blackthorn Hall and its meagre lands, were seized by writ. Rents redirected to compensate the tenants she had bled dry. Exiled and stripped of prestige, she faced a magistrate's inquiry for forgery and embezzlement, her pearls pawned to fund a hasty defence. Whispers already painted her as the true wicked one. Her fall, a cautionary tale told over village hearths. Inside the great hall, now cleared of dais and crowds, Julian Ravenswood awaited. He stood by the tall windows, sunlight gilding his dark hair, the scar on his cheek softened in the glow. At 30, he seemed unburdened, his black coat unbuttoned, revealing a waistcoat of quiet grey. The raven brooch was absent today, replaced by a simple gold chain, a deliberate choice shedding the weight of tainted legacy. "Eleanor," he said, turning with a smile that reached his eyes. Warm and unguarded, no duke's formality, just the man she had glimpsed in storm and music. "You've come. The village sings your praises this morn." She approached, her reticule light without proofs to bear. "And yours, Julian. The ledgers balance at last. Tenants reclaim their plots, Clara's farm secured for generations." Her voice held steady, laced with compassion, the teacher's tone, now laced with leadership. She had spent the dawn at the church hall, organizing lessons anew, not as a spinster's charity, but as Blackwood's gift, a proper schoolhouse funded by restored rents. He took her hand, not in possession, but equality, a gentle clasp between allies. Isolde's web unravelled fully overnight. The solicitor confirmed, Eliza's diary seals her fate. No more shadows on Blackwood. His thumb traced her knuckles lightly, a gesture of shared victory. Legal threads tied, debts forgiven, estates reclaimed, familial knots severed. Isolde disowned, her claims voided by blood ties proven false in old parchments unearthed from the attics. They walked to the library, once dust-choked, now aired and alive. Julian had ordered changes. Shelves restocked with volumes from London, not just for gentry, but loaned to villagers. "A legacy," he explained, gesturing to a corner table set with inks and quills. "Eliza dreamed of knowledge for all. We'll build on it. A reading room open to Willowbrook. Your school there too, with space for herbs and healing." Eleanor's heart swelled. Transformation shone in him. The ruthless collector softened to steward, his decisions guided by regret turned resolve. "And you? No more collecting hearts to mend estates?" He chuckled softly, a rare lightness. "Hearts, perhaps one, freely given." They paused by the harpsichord, its keys polished, the melody from that stormy night lingering in memory. From his pocket he drew a small velvet pouch. Inside, a ring, simple gold band with a single pearl, unadorned by family crests or past sorrows. No heirloom tainted by loss, crafted anew in the village smithy, chosen together in quiet plans post-assembly. "Marry me, Eleanor," he said, voice low, earnest. "Not for pact or protection, for us, equals in this new world we've forged. No kneel, no grandeur, just the offer, eye to eye, her choice unbound." Tears pricked her eyes, but joy chased them. Her vow of spinsterhood, born of fear, dissolved in this light. "Yes," she whispered, "by choice, by love." He slipped the ring on her finger, the pearl cool against her skin, a ritual pure, sealing their bond without echoes of pain. They embraced then, foreheads touching, the libraries quiet, wrapping them like a promise. Word spread swiftly. The squire, repositioned from judge to ally, hosted a modest supper that eve, toasting the union. Mrs. Beaumont, once sharp-tongued, offered linens from her stores, her daughters subdued but sincere. Clara beamed brightest, rewarded with a dowry from Blackwood's coffers for her loyalty, her farm thriving, dreams of marriage to a kind neighbour within reach. Even old tenants, neutral before, now gathered with gifts, woven baskets, fresh cheeses, symbols of gratitude. As twilight fell, Eleanor and Julian stepped onto the manor's terrace, overlooking the valley. The hills rolled golden, Willowbrook's lights twinkling like fireflies. He drew her close, and in that private hush their lips met, not in rain's wild abandon, but love's steady flame. Soft, lingering, a kiss born of trials shared and futures entwined. The horizons stretched wide, promising seasons of growth, children to fill the halls, laughter echoing where silence once reigned, legacies of learning and healing blooming under their care. Yet as stars emerged, a soft knock sounded from within. The butler approached, a letter in hand, sealed with a London crest from the solicitor. "Further news? Your Grace, Isolde's trial hastens, but a visitor en route, an old ally of Eliza's, with tales untold." Julian's brow furrowed slightly, but Eleanor's hand in his steadied him. Adventure lingered, subtle as the evening breeze, a gentle hook to horizons yet explored. For now, though, peace reigned, their new equilibrium a testament to resilience and heart. 5 years had woven their gentle tapestry over Willowbrook, the Cotswolds hills now lush with summer's full embrace, wildflowers nodding along paths once muddied by storms. Blackwood Manor stood renewed, its ivy-trimmed towers catching the afternoon sun like a crown reclaimed. Eleanor Ravenswood, once Thorn the spinster, strolled the terraced gardens with a contented grace, her hand resting lightly on the swell of her belly, her third child due with the harvest moon. At 29, time had softened her features, adding a quiet radiance to her dark curls, now often pinned with simple pearl combs. Her gown of soft lawn, empire waist with delicate embroidery of lavender sprigs, whispered against the stone steps, a far cry from the sodden muslin of that fateful rainy night. The manor buzzed with life, no longer a brooding sentinel, but a heart pulsing with activity. The schoolhouse Julian had promised now thrived in the east wing, its windows thrown wide to let in the laughter of village children reciting lessons under Eleanor's watchful eye. Herbs from her expanded garden lined the borders, feverfew and sage thriving in neat rows, tinctures brewed for tenants free of charge. Rents, once a chain of debts, flowed fairly now, farms like Clara's blooming with new barns and thriving livestock. The reading room, stocked with volumes on history and poetry, drew farmers' wives in the evenings, their fingers tracing pages Eliza had once cherished. Julian emerged from the library doors, his stride still commanding, yet tempered by fatherhood's warmth. At 35, the scar on his cheek had faded to a faint line, his raven hair touched with silver at the temples, a mark of battles won, not waged. He wore a simple coat of dove-grey wool, sleeves rolled as he often did these days, carrying their eldest, little Eliza, on his shoulders. The girl, 4 years old with her mother's curls and her father's grey eyes, giggled as she tugged his hair, her pinafore dusted with chalk from morning lessons. "Eleanor!" he called, voice rich with the affection that had deepened over seasons. He set the child down gently, and she scampered to her mother's skirts, clutching a wooden doll carved by the village smith. Julian closed the distance, his hand finding Eleanor's waist in that familiar, steady way. No grand gestures, just the quiet intimacy of shared years. The solicitor's letter arrived from London. Isolde's sentence stands, transportation to the colonies for her crimes. No return. She's paid dearly, lost everything. Even her name in society whispers. Eleanor nodded, a pang of pity mingling with justice's satisfaction. Isolde Blackthorn, once the poised schemer in sapphire silk, now faded into obscurity. Her trial had exposed the full rot, forgeries, embezzlement, even whispers of Eliza's poisoning, confirmed by a hidden vial in her attics. Stripped of estates and kin, she had begged mercy from a cold bench, her pearls long sold. The price was high, exile in a distant land, labouring under foreign suns, her venom turned to regret in solitary letters, none answered. Willowbrook had moved on, her shadow a caution etched in harvest tales. "And Clara?" Eleanor asked, though she knew the answer. Their friend had married 2 summers past, to the kind neighbour with steady hands and a laugh like summer rain. Her farm, bolstered by Blackwood's aid, yielded bountiful crops. She and her husband raised 2 boys, one already spelling words by Eleanor's tutelage. Clara visited often, her auburn curls greyer, but her spirit undimmed, a pillar of the new equilibrium they had all forged. Julian's eyes softened, tracing Eleanor's face. "Thriving. She sends her love, and a basket of those apple tarts you favour." He paused, the moment stretching with nostalgia's warmth. 5 years since the Assembly's fire-lit triumph, since the ring's simple vow in the library's hush. Their wedding had been modest, under the old oak in the village square, the same where rain had first bound them. No grand cathedral, just villagers toasting with ale, the squire offering blessings once laced with doubt. Mrs. Beaumont, repositioned as a distant aunt by marriage, had gifted linens embroidered with ravens. Her daughters, now subdued wives, attended with genuine smiles. Love had resisted time's tests, blooming not in passion's storm but in daily rhythms. Mornings shared over coffee, evenings with the children. Young Thomas, 2 and bold, chasing butterflies in the meadows. Baby Eliza's namesake, a quiet infant now toddling under their care. Trials had honed them. Eleanor's voice, once hesitant, now led village councils on education and aid. Julian's ruthlessness yielded to compassion, his ledgers open to all, turning Blackwood from ruin to refuge. Social changes rippled outward, the squire's rigid hierarchies softened, women like Clara speaking at assemblies, the church hall echoing with lessons for girls as well as boys. Yet prices lingered in memory. Julian still woke some nights, haunted by Eliza's loss, though Eleanor's hand steadied him, turning grief to legacy. She, too, bore scars. The isolation's echo in wary glances from old gossips, though respect had long silenced them. Their children, innocent of shadows, promised healing. A family where vows meant partnership, not chains. As the sun dipped, painting the hills gold, Julian drew Eleanor close, their foreheads touching as little Eliza tugged at their hems. "We've built more than walls here," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. "A world where storms bring only rain." She smiled, tears of quiet joy pricking her eyes. The swell of new life, a testament to endurance. The horizon stretched peaceful, Willowbrook's lights kindling one by one, a nostalgic close to trials, the love that shattered her spinster's vow, now the hearth of their enduring flame. In the garden's embrace, past and future intertwined, whole and unbroken. As the sun sets on Willowbrook's timeless hills, Eleanor's journey reminds us that even the sturdiest vows can bend under the weight of true connection. What began with a storm's defiant kiss evolved into a testament of resilience, where a spinster's quiet strength toppled a schemer's empire and kindled a love built on equality and trust. Julian and Eleanor teach us that shadows of the past, grief, isolation, deceit, need not define our futures. Instead, they forge us into stewards of our own destinies, turning ruins into refuges, whispers into roars of justice. In their world of Regency whispers and Cotswold's charm, we see the power of agency. One woman's refusal to flee ignited a village's awakening, proving that courage blooms not in grand ballrooms, but in herb gardens and candle-lit halls. Love, too, emerges not as a whirlwind, but a steady flame, enduring trials, honouring losses, and nurturing legacies that outlast the seasons. Isolde's fall warns of greed's hollow throne, while Clara's quiet joys and the children's laughter echo the rewards of loyalty and growth. These lessons linger, break chains of fear, speak truths unspoken, and choose partners who lift rather than claim. If Eleanor's tale stirred your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment made you cheer loudest, or which character resonated most? And to prove you journeyed to this heartfelt end, type the word Raven there. It lets fellow dreamers know you're part of our circle and helps spread these stories far and wide. Your voice fuels more romances like this one. Dive deeper into tales of forbidden vows and triumphant hearts. Check the cards for similar Regency whispers waiting just for you. Until the next storm brings passion your way, keep believing in the magic of second chances.